lang, mag-ano muna ako. Sa lahat po ng mga makikinig, kesyo ikaw po ay isang Kristiyano, isang atheist, isang Muslim, or whoever you are, i-examine niyo po yung parehong panig, okay? Wag po sanang agad-agad kung ano ng mga concluding statements bigla-bigla. Basta hayaan na yung dalawang panig mag-explain at kayo po nawa ang mag-decide. So anyway, I guess you're ready.
Yeah, so sort of if okay lang din ang audio ko on your side or for the
Well,
record for the purpose of recording if
mm-mm.
okay lang din.
Yes, okay ang iyong recording. So anyway, simulan. Pagka na-mute ko na, you can start. Okay. So
Okay.
here we are.
All right. So I'm actually an atheist. So when we are talking about atheist, it's just the being an atheist is a person na na ano ba yun? Dapat definition. It's pretty much hard to define because maraming klaseng definition. But I prefer na ginagamit ko yung ng statement na is someone who doesn't believe that there are any God exists. So the reason why any gods is because maraming there's a lot of infinite possibility of a combination ng isang God. But as of for the purpose nitong discussion na to is that we are just gonna parang narrow down the scope na magfo-focus lang tayo sa mga the classical Judeo-Christian conception ng God. So by definition, atheism doesn't actually um, parang describe or explains reality, but in essence, atheism is just the rejection of an idea of a deity or a God. It's it's the parang hindi naman denial but sort of the rejection lang talaga of the idea of God. For this case, common na sa panahon na to is just the Judeo-Christian, which is uncommon because that's the majority uh, religion nowadays. But one thing that would put forward atheism in front that would help describe reality is what we call naturalism because naturalism it's perfectly compatible with atheism. So whatever supports in favor of naturalism is hence in support for atheism because what we know or how we can define naturalism is just essentially what being described in this causal reality less minus spooky stuff. That's the oversimplification ng naturalism by definition. The much more in a nutshell kind of definition of it, naturalism. And naturalism has a lot of variation. Some sort are very hard materialist na nagbe-believe sila ng their material stuff only exists in the world. That too much hard na nag-deny na sila ng what is concepts, idea, emotion. It's no longer part. They no longer consider those as real thing. Pero there are some naturalists na that doesn't very strict or is not very much strict in that sense in explaining reality. So now, back to the proposition now, who better explains reality or what better explains reality? It's not much on how many accounts we need to describe or enumerate how many can explain every aspect of reality because there are some question or questions in reality na doesn't even need explanation or doesn't have an explanation. For example, if we are talking about naturalism, a naturalist like they say that how can you explain afterlife? But in the view of naturalism, or a naturalist, of this case, or an atheist, um, there's no point of explaining something that they don't believe in. So that's why one example as well, that um, a belief or a worldview, for example, or ideology, how to determine which better explain is in the matter of parsimony, which is what we call parsimonious, or law of parsimony. The maxi, I forgot the term, maxanity, or forgot the term somewhere there. Pero yun, essentially, it boils down to the idea that the best worldview is the one that can perhaps generate less commitment, philosophical commitment to a view, that it can answer certain question and avoid generating new question at the same time. So I think naturalism is that naturalism is the best explanation about reality, because naturalism is just what there is in the causal reality, less spooky stuff like fairies, boogeyman, those supernatural stuff. So essentially, what is in reality is just what is being supported or being researched or reviewed by naturalists that they believe exist. So, and being a naturalist is just serve as a parsimonious view of reality. Now, whatever exists is just part of natural reality, that it's one whole big homogeneous reality. So yun. So whatever support or raises the case for naturalism, that will also raises the case for atheism at the same time. So I think that's the best explanation, that the best view that we can have is to perhaps avoid a massive or multiplicity of commitment when answering one question.
First. So, a good day to all of you, and to our on behalf on our atheist friend. Thank you for being here with us sa page na ito. So sa puntong ito, dahil we are talking about what better explains reality, we must have to think many things kasi. Sa bagay, marami po tayong mga maitatanong sa ating sarili, especially on the questions like, ano yung purpose ng buhay ng tao? Bakit tayo nandirito? Meron ba talagang Diyos na umiiral? Meron bang afterlife? So here, dahil nga 10 minutes po ito at hindi po natin ilalatag lahat-lahat, I think ipe-present lang natin yung mga mahalaga lamang na puntos na dapat nating malaman why we think that Christianity really makes sense in reality. So first and foremost, syempre, alam nating lahat for sure what truth is. Ang katotohanan ay mananatili talagang katotohanan. Ito'y ganap kumbaga sa lahat ng tao, sa lahat ng lugar, sa lahat ng pangyayari. So, kahit ang mga kaibigan nating mga skeptics, they will also recognize that as well. Even though, maybe masasabi na parang itatanggi, whatever. Pero hindi nila maitatanggi yung point na yan na there is truth. Okay? Point 2, God exists. So here, meron lamang may 3 points to consider why we think and why we believe that God exists. Take note, we know that God exists through through the effects of His creation, human consciousness, and also, if we'll go on to the case for Christianity, isasali natin yung Bible, isasali natin yung case for the historical Jesus and His resurrection. First and foremost, yung sinasabi na ang universe ay mayroon talagang simula. Kahit ang mga atheists at mga agnostics, like for example, Stephen Hawking, Alexander Vilenkin, those people recognize na ang universe talaga ay may beginning. Although magkakaroon ng iba't ibang explanation, kaso nga lang they recognize that the universe had a beginning. Second, the fine-tuning argument kung saan pinipresenta dito yung universe ay fine-tuned to support life on Earth. Ganun din yung tungkol sa cells, sa biological principles, at maging sa kung paanong nagkaroon ng yung tungkol sa, for example, kung paano nangyayari yung reproduction hanggang sa mabuo yung isang sanggol whatsoever. Kumbaga, mapapansin natin na mula sa katotohanan ng universe ay masasabing fine-tuned talaga to support life on Earth mula sa tamang layo ng araw dito sa solar system tungo sa pinakamalapit na araw na sa outside solar system. Also maging yung sa gravity, yung axial tilt ng mundo, at marami pang iba. Doon natin marirecognize talaga na ang universe at maging ang buhay mismo ay naka-designed. Pangatlo riyan, moral argument, kung saan pinupunto rito na kung mayroong objective moral values, meron ding objective moral lawgiver. And we are talking about God here. Kumbaga, pasimplihin lang natin. Itanong natin po sa ating mga kaibigan, yun bang nangyari na torturing babies for fun? Tama o mali? Siyempre, sigurado tayo na masasabi nilang mali yung ganoong gawi. Isa lang ibig sabihin doon. Kung may objective evil, may objectively good. Pero kanino manggagaling objectively good? Siyempre, ito po ay nanggaling mismo sa nature ng Diyos mismo. So, yung 3 points to consider pa yan, even though hindi pa natin nabanggit yung tungkol sa ontological, argument from change and whatsoever, doon nare-recognize talaga natin that God really exists. At the same time, kung titignan po natin mabuti yung scientific and philosophical point of view dyan, we know for sure that God exists. Bagamat hindi po natin agad-agad ginamit yung Bible dyan to prove that. Okay? Pero we are not done yet. Siyempre, andun din yung miracles. Ngayon, if God exists, kumbaga, then miracles are possible. Paano? Kung alam natin yung sa simula pa lang, yung tungkol sa ang universe ay may simula, if the universe had a beginning, then we know for sure na there is someone who created everything in the universe out of nothing. So, kung tama po yung pahayag ng Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, then masasabi natin na every miracle, lalo na yung mga nakarecord sa Biblia, ay talagang nangyari. And at the same time, wait a minute, ayan. Siyempre, hindi rin mawawala yung case for the reliability of the Bible, particular na rin yung New Testament. Dahil maikli lamang yung oras natin, magbabanggit lamang ako ng tatlong punto why we know that the New Testament was reliable. Take note, hindi po natin agad-agad ina-assume na ito ay inspired, okay? Ang punto lamang dito, we know that based on the evidence itself, masasabi natin ang New Testament ay reliable, especially on the records about who Jesus is and about His resurrection. Kung titingnan natin yung eyewitness testimony, masasabi yung New Testament ay talagang naisulat sa mismong panahon ng mga naka-witness niyan, lalo yung mga apostol ni Kristo. Also, masasabi natin na may mga embarrassing testimony dyan. Hindi po talaga nila itinago yung mga naging mga pagkakamali ng mga apostol ni Kristo, like they were dim-witted, na they were uncaring, na-rebuke pa nga sila ni Kristo dyan eh. Like for example, the Apostle Peter, di ba? Sa Matthew chapter 16 kung saan, pinipinpoint dito na si Apostle Pedro ay nirebuke ng Panginoong Jesus. Biro mo tatawagin si Apostle Peter na Satan when Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." Hindi na napaka-embarrassing yun eh, kung tutusin. Siyempre, may record din na sila ay naging duwag sa panahong yan, lalo nung dinakip si Kristo, whatsoever. And at the same time, bukod doon sa mga embarrassing testimony na nabanggit, kung excruciating testimony pang nababanggit dyan, pansinin natin, itong mga apostol ni Kristo, when they saw the risen Lord, mamaya, ipupunto natin yung short case for the resurrection. Itong mga apostol ni Kristo, when they saw the risen Lord, yung dating mga duwag, naging mga matatapang na disipulo. And take note, they were willing to die because of what they witnessed. Hindi po sila nahiya doon, kumbaga. At saka bukod pa rito, if we're going to see about who Jesus is and about His resurrection from the dead, makikita talaga natin na nangyari yan. Like Jesus died by means of crucifixion. Kahit mga atheists and other skeptics like Bart Ehrman, sinasabi na Jesus really died by means of crucifixion. Point two, the tomb was empty. Yung mga tao noon, even yung mga enemies ni Cristo, they are aware about the news that the tomb was empty. Ikatlong punto, nakita siya ng mga disipulo niya at maging yung 500 katao na talagang si Jesus ay muling nabuhay. Also, one more thing, because of what they saw, pinupunto lamang dito na naging matatapang silang mga disipulo, ano pat they are even willing to die for it. So, kung mapapansin natin, kung isasama pa natin yung mga divine claims ng Panginoong Jesus, talagang mapapansin po natin talaga that na bukod sa mga patutuong yan mula sa point na may absolute truth talaga, hanggang sa puntong may Diyos talaga na umiiral based on the philosophical and scientific facts. Mula sa patutuo na may himala, tungkol naman din sa reliability ng New Testament, hanggang sa muling pagkabuhay ng Panginoong Jesus, masasabi po talaga natin na totoo po yung punto about sa Christianity. Now, why Christianity makes sense in reality? Kasi bukod sa natural worldview, natural world, kumbaga, meron ding matatawag na spiritual worldview na kung saan may papaliwanag dito yung iba pa mga attributes din, yung mga pag-ugali na mayroon talagang tao. At saka mapapansin natin na in Christianity talaga, mayroon talagang layunin ng buhay ng tao. Na, kumbaga, according to Christ in John 17:3, this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. And in Matthew 28:19, ipinupunto ni Kristo na go, make disciples of all nations. Therefore, based on these points, masasabi talaga natin na Christianity really makes sense in the reality. Dahil, take note, because of what Jesus has done on the cross, and when He rose from the dead, we have hope of eternal life. Kumbaga, yung buhay ng tao sa mundong ito ay hindi lamang natatapos dito. And if Christianity is true, then mayroon talagang sense ang reality. So, anyway.
Okay. So, meron ako mga few question regarding about your statement na about, I think, first statement or first case na sinasabi mo is about fine-tune argument, no? So, itong fine-tune, like, mga specific variation, I think you're aware about argument of fine-tuning is that itong mga values na to, may I ask na, is it starting in the beginning? Like, when the universe exists or begins, this value started immediately. Like, value for life.
Mm-mm. Medyo, wait lang. Medyo i-clarify mo yung tanong. Okay lang?
So, yeah. So, yung question mo is about fine-tune. Of course, yung fine-tune is saying that the universe has a parang specific value na nilagay ng designer to create or make it conducive sa life. But this value, may I ask if does this initial value yung pag-start talaga ng universe or before, or is it gradual hanggang naging value, hanggang naging siyang merong yung value na para conducive sa life? Is it gradually hanggang pumunta dyan in that sense?
Well, concerning to the fine-tuning kasi, syempre pinupunto doon yung kasi yung sinabi doon na sumusuporta yung universe ay fine-tuned to support life on earth. In a sense talaga na masasabi natin na mula sa pagkakaayos, halimbawa sa earth na lang for example, yung pagkakaayos niya ng axial tilt niyan, tapos yung kung gaano kalayo yung pinakamalapit na araw pinakamalapit na between sa solar system, tapos yung masasabi natin, yung sa gravity mismo, for example na lang, na kung imumove mo kahit kapiranggot lamang na measurement doon, wala mag-exist na stars, wala mag-exist na planets or whatever. At saka, kung mapapansin din, especially like for example na lamang sa galaxy natin, talagang
So,
nasa right
parang
na, oo,
initial talaga yung pag
yes,
example,
yes it
um,
is.
pag start ng clock, ganyan talaga, like start na parang value is, let's just say, yung value ng conclusive ng universe is, let's just say, 1.2. For example lang.
Yes
That's
it
it, yung
is.
paggawa ng universe agad ang 1.2. Okay. Okay.
Yes it is. Okay.
So, next one is, yes, following sa second question then, first question, I mean, do you even, is it think, or do you wonder the possibility na if granted na meron talagang designer of this fine-tuned universe na hindi siya parang God ng Christianity, let's just say a indifferent being na gumawa lang ng universe just because he can, do you ever entertain that question or idea?
Well, possibly kasi actually hindi ko kanina nga sa pag-present ko kanina doon sa sa case for the existence of God, hindi ko pa kaagad-agad sinasabi na oh, God of Christianity na yan kaagad-agad. Ang punto ko lang dito, kumbaga, we can know for sure na there is someone talaga who created the universe, who designed the universe. Kung meron man siguro na masasabi na ibang being or whatsoever, okay. But since we already tackled this dahil naisasali natin yung cumulative case dyan, isali pa dyan yung sa Bible, especially who Jesus is and whatsoever, I think doon pa lamang sa points na yan, we can know na yung tinutukoy dyan ay God of the Bible. Pero doon sa pinakapunto ko lang, hindi ko agad-agad sinasabi na God of the Bible kaagad-agad or God of Christianity.
Okay.
Okay, sige, next question. Matagal pa to.
Next question is that, so how can you say na there is an objective morality, and if there is, how can we be sure na it exactly came from God?
Okay. Clarify uli yung tanong para maintindihan. Hindi lang ako, kundi kaibigan din natin. Sige.
So how could you say that morality is objective, and if such, how can you connect God to that in that first place?
Okay. Okay, gets ko na. Salamat. Wait a minute. Pinipindot ko rin na para 10 minutes para alam nila na umandar yung time natin. Anyway, concerning to that, why would I know that there are objective moral values? Kasi kung papansinin natin, halimbawa, naitanong ko doon mismo sa presentation, masasabi ba natin na tama lamang ba na i-torture ang babies for fun? Siyempre, maraming magsasabi na hindi. Therefore, alam natin for sure na ganap na mali talaga yon. Hindi talaga, masama talaga. Excuse me? Masama talaga at karimari-marim na yan ang gagawin mo sa isang sanggol o sa mga sanggol, so to speak. Siyempre, kung mayroong objective evil, may objective good. But since we know that there is what was called objective good, mayroong pinanggalingan yan. And I will quote C.S. Lewis concerning to that, na take note itong si C.S. Lewis, dati siyang atheist. And nung na-realize niya na yung kanyang mga argument against God because of the evil that happened, injustice, actually, ito yung magiging malaking sampal pagka sinasabi na totoo yung sinasabing atheistic worldview. Anyway, sabi ni C.S. Lewis, as an atheist, my argument against God was that the universe seemed so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was comparing the universe with when I called it unjust? Sa madaling sabi, kung may injustice, may justice kung tutuusin. At saka ito pa, last na to, no? kung walang objective moral values, paano natin masasabi na mali yung mga Nazi sa kanilang ginawa? Diba? So anyway, that's the answer. Thank you.
So,
Next one.
so regarding about that, if right, how can we how can we know na right is good? Is it and in your case, you believe that it's coming from the God, diba? As an objective standard. But how can we say what's right and wrong? So is it like God being commanded us to declare that these acts are right and those acts are wrong, or what, or how does that work exactly?
Actually, since God is the lawgiver na matatawag, objective moral lawgiver kung tutusin, siya mismo kumbaga, yung kanyang goodness mismo yung pinakabatayan ng kung ano yung nakabubuti at yung ano yung hindi, kumbaga. Kumbaga, kung tutusin, if God does not exist, sige, if God does not exist, tingnan po natin, if there are no objective moral values, bukod sa sinabi ko kanina na masasabi natin yung ginawa ng Nazis
But
noong World War II, I mean,
seems to be
sige.
how can we say na right is right exactly if it's coming from him? I mean, how can we say it's right? Like, is it like God has declared or decree like an edict, as what you use na you mentioned C.S. Lewis, like a lawgiver? Is it like an edict? Parang ganyan? Like,
What do you mean
I
by that?
declared edict like law. I declare this RA chu 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 chu, and then this is the right thing. Parang ganyan, or how exactly? How
Okay.
does make
What,
not torturing babies for fun is wrong? Like how?
are you talking wait lang parang i-clarify lang ng konti.
Hmm.
Are you talking about yung kung sana tama yung aking pronunciation, no? Are you talking about Euthyphro dilemma ba?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much common if we are talking about morality in a sense of a religious morality. It will always comes up when we talk about it. So
Okay.
yeah, that's the question. Is it how?
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so ipupunto ko lang muna yung tungkol sa Euthyphro dilemma na kung saan, yan nga, na banggit mo kanina na, excuse me, like for example, yung na, first, if a thing is good simply because God says it is, then it seems that God could say anything was good and it would be. This might include, medyo mahaba ba, iano ko na lang to. But however, if
in
God is
essence,
simply
in
i-explain ko
essence,
muna,
short version. Oh, sige. Sorry.
Paliwanag mo yung short version niya para maintindihan.
So good is good because God said so, or the act is good because it is God consider it as good.
Okay. Thank you dun sa short version, no. Okay. Anyway, so kumbaga kung tama yung point na yung Euthyphro dilemma, dilemma 'yon. Pero may third option kasi diyan. How did we know na mayroong third option? As Christians, we should affirm both God's sovereignty and His non-derived goodness. Thus, we don't want a standard that is arbitrary, nor one that exists outside or above God. Fortunately, God is both supremely sovereign and good. Therefore, God's nature itself can serve as the standard of goodness, and God can base His declarations of goodness on Himself. God's nature is unchangeable and wholly good. Thus, His will is not arbitrary and His declarations are always true. So, siguro,
So if that's the case, na good is, if good is just what God's nature, but again, let's just say na right now God is the status quo na good is what is good is based on God's nature. Let's just say tomorrow that we discover God's nature is actually, let's just say, a liar. If that's the case, what will happen to such morality, this objective morality? What will happen? Is it lying is now the good because it's part of God's nature to lie, for example? Like it's hinge or parang peg to God's nature. and then we later know na God's nature is a liar, for example. Is it lying became good na in that sense?
First and
And truth,
foremost, sige, patapusin mo muna yung tanong, sorry.
and in that sense, is it truth saying truth is already a sin? If that's the case na we discover by tomorrow.
Actually, in that said question kasi,
Mm.
kung sasabihin ibig sabihin pag nagsinungaling ang Diyos, ganito, ganyan. Actually, kung tutusin, kung titingnan natin, since we know for sure that God is, I mean, yung God's nature is the standard of goodness, kung tutusin, even based on the scripture, halimbawa, based on the Bible, we know for sure that God cannot lie. God cannot do that contradicts his own nature, like lying
But again,
or whatsoever. Wait. Let me
we're
finish.
Sige.
Let me finish.
Oh.
So to answer the question, kung tutusin, concerning if how is God the standard of goodness na lang, for example, well, He is the creator. A thing's goodness is determined by its purpose. Isipin natin yung mga example. A dull knife is not a good knife because the purpose of knife is to cut. Sharpness is bad for a shoe. However, for a good shoe is one that is comfortable and supportive to a foot. God as a creator,
Still,
wait lang.
that's
Let
not
me finish.
my
Let me finish.
answer.
Let me finish. God as the creator is the determiner of all purposes of his creation. What he makes is made purposefully, and anything that stands in the way of that purpose is bad. Rape is evil because that is not what sex is made to be. Murder is evil because it is not the purpose of humans to arbitrarily decide when people should die. So in conclusion,
okay.
Okay. Sige. You have last question mo na lang kasi patatapos tayo. Go for it.
Ayos.
Sige.
I don't think.
Mamaya mo na tignan yung comment section.
Oh yeah. So last thing is that I think just one last question na lang is are you you mentioned Bart Ehrman because when I read Bart Ehrman's book, he also parang he affirms na the New Testament's eyewitnesses is not actually direct eyewitnesses. It's actually those people information being passed down through generation, and the written or New Testament.
Hello.
Testament. Hello.
Sorry for interruption. Tapos na yung 15 minutes. Ang haba ng tanong. Okay.
So
okay lang. Siguro itanong mo lang ulit tapos mamaya ko lang i-address sa concluding statement. So ano yung pinakatanong mo? Sige, ini-stop ko lang pero ano yung pinakatanong mo about New Testament? Sige. Yung i-address ko lang mamaya sa conclusion.
Yeah. Are you aware na those who wrote the New Testament, the writers, the authors, are not actually the exact persons yung sinasabi sa New Testament na who walk along Jesus?
Sorry for that. Kakatapos ko lang uminom ng kape. Okay, so sasagutin ko lang yan mamaya sa conclusion. Okay, yan. First question, if there's no God, actually naitanong ko na yata before yan eh. Why is there something rather than nothing at all? Go for it.
Well, in the first place, what do you mean by nothing?
Nothing as what?
Essentially.
Okay. Nothing as what Aristotle said. Rock was nothing is like what the rocks dream about. Kumbaga, wala talaga, as in wala. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that kind of question is actually to be honest nonsensical, if to be honest. What do you mean by nothing exactly? How can we conceptualize nothing? Is it like in the Alice in Wonderland saying na when Alice peered down on the telescope, she saw nobody, and then the king said na, I wish I could see the same as you, to see nobody. in that sense. It's actually nonsensical when you say everything comes into nothing. If there's no God, where is there something rather than nothing? In my view, what do you mean by nothing exactly? Because I don't have that view. We believe that something came from something, and that's my sense, what I understand. But there are some na who call themselves atheists really fall to that kind of question.
Okay. Salamat sa answer. Next question. Uh, concerning to what makes sense reality. How did
Mm.
you 'di ba? Syempre, you are an atheist kumbaga. So, how did you come to that conclusion that atheism is true?
Well, it's the reason for that is that the evidence that support for atheism, it's making it more probable compared with theism as well. The evidence that support or against, or the evidence that against, for this case, for atheism, there are some evidence, but they're considered to be weak evidence. It's And that's why I think it's much more probable that atheism is true, or for this case, it is much more probable that theism, or for this case, for this matter specifically, Christian theism is false.
Okay, thank you. So next question naman, how can you say that a certain deed is right and a certain deed is wrong if atheism is true? Answer that. Can you answer that?
Well, to be honest, atheism doesn't concern that kind of question, but there are a lot of meta-ethics or ethics that are purely secular for that case. There are a lot, but I can enumerate some. For example, let's just say the utilitarianism, for example, the virtue ethics, and some said na I recently learned what we call the ideal observer model. There are a lot of secular idea, and the reason why I think na if atheism is true, how can we determine morality? Actually, no. The answer is that atheism doesn't concern in that sense about those kind of question. But the only thing that we could say na there's, I mean, the issue is that this isn't parang dichotomy lang na situation. It's either God or no God morality. But again, if we choose God morality, there are some issue which we encountered earlier na Euthyphro dilemma. It creates some paradoxical situation. So we cannot choose on the God morality side. So we have to choose on the secular morality part. Morality in the view of atheism, God doesn't have anything to do with it. So yun ang answer.
Okay, thank you. Now, itong tanong ay ito. Do you believe, or let's say, do you think that the universe had a beginning? Yes or no, and why?
I don't think it's a no, because when we say universe, that's the entire reality. What is outside? What is no universe exactly? Nothingness. If we say nothingness, how can we say there was nothing? If there was nothing, there shouldn't be any observer at all. Even let's just say let's just parang skeptical lang muna, or biblical skeptical lang muna for a second. On Genesis 1, it mentioned in the beginning. It's in the causal reality. It doesn't even have the conception ng what is nothing beyond universe or before universe. So it's a no. But there are some atheists said that there was a beginning universe, but atheism doesn't have a univocal answer about that.
Okay. So here I will quote Alexander. No, I mean Stephen Hawking, who says almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Concerning to what he said, what is your reaction to that quotation?
That's false. They need to update that kind of quotation because Stephen Hawking is not the only one that works in astrophysics or cosmology. There are a lot of physicists saying that the universe is eternal. It's possible it's eternal. It's not just Stephen Hawking. Let's just say his partner, Sir Roger Penrose, for example. He advocated a cyclical universe, an eternal universe in that sense. So there are still debates about it, but it's not 100% consensus. So
Concerning to
it's a
this,
false. That
okay,
quotation
okay.
is false.
Akala ko tapos na, sorry ah. Anyway, next question naman, concerning again to the beginning of the universe. How about the time? What do you think about that, the space, time, and continuum? What do you think about that? That was the
It,
time had a beginning, or time is eternal as well?
yeah, it is eternal, as is.
So if time is eternal, then what about what was called past, present, and future?
And past, present, future is actually a reference for us. If we don't exist, there's no such thing about past, present, future. It's an arbitrary selection within infinity or in time, in an eternal time. It's arbitrary. So we could just say essentially this is the present of this universe. And what happened in the future, that's the future in time. Or whatever is the past, yesterday is the past. Past, present, future is a conception that we create, an arbitrary conception that we place for ourselves.
Okay, thank
But
you.
but
Ay,
still
akala ko tapos
we
na, sorry ah.
I mean
Sorry.
but still
Tuloy mo.
we still have a past, if that's the sense. Like we have memories like that, but what we call past is just parang um anthropomorphic in a sense, like we only use it in our convention. Mm.
Well, okay na.
Okay.
Kasi ano tumitigil muna ako, baka di pa tapos eh. Sorry for that, no? Kung na-interrupt kita kanina.
Yeah, sure, no
Anyway,
worries.
okay. So anyway, next question naman ay may kinalaman sa moral values, especially objective moral values. Do you think mayroong objective moral values? Kung meron o kung wala, bakit?
Well, to be honest, I'm agnostic on that part. There are no exact answer on the side of the fence ng atheism na there is or there's not, or is it subjective or is it not. But essentially, I'm essentially agnostic on that area. But one thing I could say na if there is, I don't think God has to do anything with it.
All right. Baka may dadagdag ka. Excuse me.
Yun lang.
Kasi kanina, na-interrupt pa kita kanina. Sorry doon. Anyway. So ngayon, next question. Ito naman. What do you think about Jesus Christ?
To be honest, I'm right now, just for the sake of purposes, there is such a person. But if the question was purpose is to entail na if Jesus exists, so resurrection exists, is actually no. I could say for conservatively na lang is that because there's still a debate on that part, both sides. I am not heavily biased on the biblical scholars, but I'm also taking sides or considering the side of the an um, anthropologists or historians outside the biblical study saying that Jesus doesn't exist. But for my answer lang is he exists as a man, and that's it, who died in the cross, essentially.
Okay.
Oh
So
God, yeah,
now,
died
ay
in the
so
cross. Oh, sige, sige. Sorry, sorry.
sorry, sorry.
Go.
Okay lang, okay lang, okay lang. Now, ngayon, concerning to this matter, since, okay, itatanong ko lang about dito na. In atheism, what is the purpose of life?
There. That's my favorite question. What is the purpose of life? Of life? No, there's no purpose. But what is the purpose in life? You can select what is your purpose. Purpose is only meaningful to the person who sets that purpose for him, because that's what gives it meaning, essentially. In atheism, that question of life, it's nonsense. What does that even mean?
Okay na?
Yeah, that's it. There's
Okay.
no me. So essentially, yung summary, what is the meaning of keyword is of life? There's no meaning on that case. But what is the meaning in life? There are a lot of meaning. You have to choose, find that meaning, essentially.
Okay. So thank you for the answer. Now, concerning to the issue of uh, ano yun, yung naturalism for example, ano ba
Mm.
yung masasabing sagot may kinalaman dyan, especially about mga immaterial realities like love, justice, peace, at iba pa like laws of gravity, laws of logic, laws of mathematics, and so forth. What is the explanation of naturalism concerning to that?
Well, in that sense, if we avoid reifying love, peace, or those value, justice, they can be still grounded in this natural reality. That is essentially what naturalism is. Is we're not saying that everything is in molecules, love, conception of love. No, that's not the case. There might be some who are very parang materialist, like nilang Baron de Holbach. That was the earliest atheist who let's just say proposed that materialism is all there is. He believed in mechanical universe. Everything is in parang ganyan. It's an old school thinking. But as we learn as of right now, we have a different sense or a new variation of naturalism. So that's one part. If we avoid reifying love, it can be grounded in natural reality. And second, about ano ba yung second part again? Sorry.
Oh,
Yung
yeah.
atong after sa love or something.
Laws of logic, laws of mathematics
Ah,
natang
yeah.
nabanggit ko.
Yes, about those are description of reality. We examine reality, and we make a generalization out, and we call them law. It could be just natural principle, we can call them that. But that if we also avoid reifying, it's just a description of reality. If we reify it, we're as if like talking na what is the where is Gondor, or where is Middle Earth. If we look at the map of Middle Earth, we're saying that there, if we look at the map of Middle Earth, we thinking that Middle Earth is real? Of course not. That's not how we think. That's not how we should think. First, that we should avoid saying avoid reifying descriptions, or in that sense. That's not reality, or naturalism doesn't answer that way, or parang ganyan.
Okay, thank you.
So, as a final conclusion, that I know there are some problems on the reasoning with my counterpart as well. I think I can still think na naturalism, or for this case, natural atheism, is the best explanation that we have, or can best explain realities. That because in naturalism we tend not to generate a lot of commitments to a certain belief. For example, like as what you did with the fine tuning policy, fine tuning argument, especially the beginning of the universe or how life begins. The reason why I ask na is it is it the number 1.2? Is it part of the initial when the universe got created? The issue on that part is that how did they come up with the 1.2 value of a fine tuning value to conducive for life? Because if there was nothing before, there would be no such law exists to identify the law of conducive life, universal life, that would create. So there's that part. Now if we selected the first option, the value, or the value that should be conducive for life, is initial. It's part of the initial creation of the universe. How did they come up with that number, and what law that govern it? Because if there is such number or such property, there is a law that governs that. So it's self-defeating essentially. So, and lastly, on the part of the objective morals, and for the sake of argument, na objective morality, if there is a god, let's just say if there is a god, it's still a problematic as well. There are a lot of angles that can be viewed to see that it's problematic. And if it's problematic, that is no longer the probability that theism is true, or Christian theism is true. It's getting lower if that fails. So, for example, for the objective morality, if there is such objective morality, God, that's kind of morality would be parang arbitrary, because essentially, if whatever God said is true, then whatever God said is good, we should do it because that's what He said. It became arbitrary. And now, if God, what is good is part of God's nature, that would mean, I mean, God nature, or because God, or good is part whatever is the nature of God is good. In that sense, in the second horn of the dilemma, it is presupposing that there is a independent goodness criteria already. So that's the one problem there. And lastly, was that able to ask the question, if Christianity is true, the problem here is that reality wouldn't make sense at all, in the sense that anytime anyone can just be resurrected by dead, miracles happen, suspends the law of gravity for that case, because if they want to believe in miracles. So I don't think na it I don't think na it is the best explanation of reality, because with this inherent problem, with the argument that's supporting the best explanation, or the best picture to explain reality, and that's the issue. There's a lot of commitment there are it answer less question, or it answer less question, but it generated more question, more essentially. So that's why I think um theism, the big picture theism that can explain reality, failed its supposed claim that they trying to attain, that whichever is the best explanation.
Muna. So bago tayo matapos, ipipinpoint ko muna yung naging tanong sa akin ng ating kaibigan concerning yung claim ni Bart Ehrman na posibleng yung mga disipulo ni Kristo mismo yung hindi raw nagsulat. But here's the point na dapat nating makonsidera. Ang sinabi ko po kanina, Yung New Testament documents ay naisulat nung mismong nung first century mismo, sa panahon kung kailang buhay na buhay pa noon yung mga eyewitness doon sa pangyayari ukol kay Kristo, including the resurrection. So at this point, pinaikli ko na lamang yung sagot dito dahil yung oras natin ay napakaikli lang. So I will go on to point out some yung mga tanong na nasagot ng ating kaibigan concerning to that, like why is there something rather than nothing at all, or how did he came to that conclusion that atheism is true, what is the purpose in life na sinabi niya kanina, and other points na pinipresent na. Kung titingnan natin, na pinpoint ko kanina kung ano talaga yung nothing as what Aristotle said, nothing is what rocks dream about. Ibig sabihin, totally wala po talaga. As in, wala po talaga. And if we consider some points na sinabi ng ilang mga experts like Stephen Hawking na nabanggit kanina, and even Alexander Valenkin and other skeptic scientists, kumbaga, lalo sa sinabi nila na pinipinpoint na yung, especially on the Big Bang, for example, pinupunto nila dito about the creation. Kino-connect na lang nila out ito about sa sinasabi na in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Concerning yung threefold dilemma na binanggit niya kanina, actually yung third option na pinpoint kanina ay hindi pa gaanong na-address. Kumbaga, dahil I will go on to repeat the said answer. As Christians, we should affirm both God's sovereignty and His non-derived goodness. Thus, we don't want a standard that is arbitrary, nor one that exists outside or above God. Fortunately, God is both supremely sovereign and good. Therefore, God's nature itself can serve as the standard of goodness, and God can base His declarations of goodness on Himself. God's nature is unchangeable and wholly good. Thus, His will is not arbitrary and His declarations are always true. Concerning dun sa sinabi kanina na paanong na how about dun sa objective moral values and duties, well, if atheism is true kasi, if there are no objective moral values and duties, yun na nga, gaya ng pinipinpoint ko, kung walang objective moral values, yung Nazis, yung ginawa ng Nazi ay walang, hindi masasabing na mali. Kumbaga, love is no better than rape, freedom is no better than slavery, tolerance is no better than intolerance, and if there is no objective morality, a person cannot complain about the problem of evil. Now, kung itatakil sana natin about dun sa issue about why there's evil in the world or whatsoever, if we'll go on through Christ Himself, if He really exists, and yes, He really existed based on the records, not only on the New Testament, but also other sources like Josephus and others. And if Jesus really died on the cross for our sins and rose again from the dead, then mayroon pa rin pag-asa kung tutuusin, especially on eternal life. Because if there's no God, if there's no afterlife as well, then we are all doomed. Magyang universe na to kung tutusin, maski man ang mga experts dito, they recognize na yung energy ng universe nawawala, lahat mawawala. So therefore, may simula talagang universe, so to speak. But here's the point that we must have to consider. If God exists, and if Jesus had risen from the dead, at kung saan ang i-discuss po natin ang kabuuan about the evidence for the resurrection, well then, game over. Christianity is true. So what better explains reality? Kung titingnan natin, ang buhay ay hindi lamang material, hindi lamang to natural. We know for sure that there are immaterial realities na nag-exist dyan. And if God exists, if Jesus had risen from the dead, then there is still hope. So to point out this way, ang maging tanong ko sa mga kaibigan natin, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian?